Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And this time, I wanted to talk to you about Jupiter's translation of light that begins on July 20th, 21st, and culminates on the 31st of August. Now, you might ask, what is a translation of light? A translation of light is when a faster-moving planet separates from one planet in the sky and approaches another. You can almost think of it as a baton being passed from one runner to another in a relay race. The light being translated is the baton, and the runner in this scenario is Jupiter, the one who's passing it from one planet to another. So we begin with a Jupiter-Neptune trine on July 20th, which is then followed by a Jupiter-Pluto opposition on July 20th. This is then followed by a sextile to Uranus on July 21st. This is an extraordinary translation of light that is very, very rare, and it will culminate when Jupiter finally forms a trine to Saturn on August 31st. So, what makes this translation of light so special? A couple of things. The first thing is pretty much all of the aspects are positive aspects. Okay, these don't really involve any squares or oppositions. Now, for those who were listening closely, you'll be like, well, Christopher, you mentioned that Jupiter was opposing Pluto after it formed a trine to Neptune. And yes, I cop to that. But the opposition that Jupiter makes to Pluto is not a singular opposition. Pluto, in turn, trines Uranus, which is the ruler of Pluto in Aquarius, and Pluto will also be forming a sextile by sign to Neptune in Aries. So in other words, Jupiter is passing along this energy through these particular planets, and at no point is it being interrupted or thwarted in any sort of way. And so each of these planets impress upon Jupiter their own particular influence. What also makes this very special is Jupiter's unique relationship to each one of the planets that are involved in this translation of light. For instance, the first aspect on July 20th involves a trine between Jupiter and Neptune. And in Greek mythology, Jupiter and Neptune and Pluto are all brothers. Following Jupiter's war against his father Saturn in the heavens and his eventual overthrow of Saturn, Jupiter and his brothers Neptune and Pluto cast lots over who will govern over certain aspects of the world. Jupiter wins, and so he gets rulership over the sky. Neptune comes in second, and he gets rulership over the oceans, and Pluto kind of gets the short end of the stick, and he winds up becoming the ruler of the underworld. So the fact that Jupiter is forming a trine to Neptune, then moving on to an opposition to Pluto, we are involved with very key events that are taking place with two of his brothers from mythology. The last part of this translation of light involves Uranus. And one might ask, well, what's Jupiter's relationship to Uranus? Jupiter's relationship to Uranus is that Uranus is Jupiter's grandfather. Uranus is the original ruler over the cosmos before he's overthrown by Saturn. Saturn, after overthrowing his father, learns from a prophecy that he will in turn be overthrown by one of his children, and so he swallows them all. And so he goes ahead and he swallows Neptune and Pluto, along with Hera and Demeter and Vesta. I think there might be a third one in there, but I'm not quite remembering. But anyway, he goes ahead and he swallows them all and basically stops time and stops this prophecy of him being overthrown from taking place. But little did Saturn know that his wife Rhea had secreted away Jupiter to an island where he grew into a full man and goes and wages war against his father and wins, as we've already talked about. So Uranus is basically the grandfather of Zeus. He's the grandfather of Jupiter. And what's also fascinating about their relationship is Jupiter, as I said before, is the ruler of the sky. But the sky that Jupiter rules over is the daytime sky, the sky that when the sun is out, we can see things. We can see for miles and miles. We can see our hands in front of us. We can see mountains and country and sheep that we're tending in the fields. We can see these things. So Jupiter is a planet of illumination, and he rules over essentially the blue sky of day. But the sky that Uranus rules over, we would pretty much call nowadays space. Uranus means starry night or starry heavens. And so when the sun goes down, you can suddenly see the heavens. You can see the stars. You can see the planets in the nighttime sky. You can see the moon. And this is what Uranus rules over. He rules over the vault of heaven. So Jupiter essentially rules over life in this mortal world, and Uranus rules over eternity. So what happens as Jupiter picks up the light of one planet and translates it to the next is that Jupiter is essentially absorbing the best of what that planet has to offer. Now, every planet in astrology will always represent what it represents, okay? So in other words, the character of Uranus is to be the planet of revolution and change. The character of Neptune is to be the planet of illusion and disillusionment. And the character of Pluto is to be the planet of ordeals and the transformations that arise from them. These are the essential characters of these three planets. And those planets, their character never changes. But their demeanor changes dependent on the aspect that it is making to the faster moving planet. So in other words, if Neptune is trining Jupiter, Neptune goes from being the planet of illusion and disillusionment to the planet of inspiration. And when Jupiter forms an opposition to Pluto, Pluto is indeed the planet of ordeals and the transformations that arise from them. But because Pluto is forming a sextile to Neptune and a trine to Uranus, that character changes its demeanor, so that instead of just confronting Jupiter with, I am the planet of ordeals and the transformations that arise from them, bend your knee to me. Okay, so instead of this kind of standoff, which can happen with an opposition, Pluto, because it forms a sextile to Neptune and a trine to Uranus, Pluto changes its demeanor from ordeals and the transformations that arise from them to the planet of evolution and rebirth. So in other words, there's an evolutionary aspect to this encounter with Pluto that's taking place on that July 20th date. And finally, as Jupiter forms a sextile to Uranus, Uranus changes its demeanor from the planet of revolution and change to the planet of enlightenment. So you have these ideas of inspiration, evolution, enlightenment. These virtues, these gifts, these blessings are being given to Jupiter to carry on to its final translation of light, which is to the planet Saturn on August 31st. And it's this final translation of light to Saturn, this final trine that Jupiter's making to Saturn, that is perhaps the most significant aspect of all. That's because Saturn is the father of Jupiter. Jupiter overthrows Saturn in order to become the king of heaven. And so these are two planets that have a very antagonistic relationship to one another. But what happens is that antagonism changes as a result of the trine, which is a benevolent relationship between the two. So what does Saturn have to give to Jupiter that's so very, very special? What Saturn has to give to Jupiter is the ability to apply these things in the world. So in other words, it's wonderful that Jupiter has absorbed inspiration. It's terrific that Jupiter has gained the understanding of personal evolution. And it's fantastic that Jupiter feels enlightened by the rays of Uranus. But it's one thing to experience these things, and it's another to know how to apply them in your everyday life. And this is the special gift of Saturn, because Saturn shows Jupiter how to apply this inspiration, this personal evolution, this enlightenment to the events of your own everyday life so that you benefit from them in your external life as well as in your internal and spiritual one. So what does Jupiter do in astrology? Jupiter is the planet of good fortune and higher purpose. Now, a lot of times we regard Jupiter passing through a zodiac sign as sort of winning the lottery if you happen to be born under that sign or have that sign rising. It's this idea of Santa Claus coming to town and giving you all sorts of gifts and treats, things that will make life easier and better for you. But there's a little bit more going on with Jupiter than just that. A little bit more going on than Jupiter handing you a doggy treat whenever you go and obey Jupiter or bring back a frisbee that you caught. Okay, so what Jupiter's point is to do is to lift your sights. By bringing good fortune and higher purpose into your life, the idea being that good fortune is linked to the experience of your higher purpose, Jupiter essentially turns you into an agent of its own good fortune. Jupiter works off the idea of bringing good into the world, and that good begets good. That if you do a good act towards another person, then that person in turn will perform or do a good act for someone else. It's the idea of paying it forward. And it's through this chain of good actions that Jupiter brings good into the world and rewards that by making your life more prosperous or more benevolent. Jupiter is also the planet of belief and faith. And oftentimes the ideas of good fortune and higher purpose are also connected to our idea of God. Indeed, there are 12 faces of God in the zodiac because Jupiter travels through 12 zodiac signs. So what happens with our sense of good fortune and higher purpose? What happens with our sense of the deity or the spiritual when Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo? Leo, as we all know, is the zodiac sign of I've got to be me. Okay, Leo is the zodiac sign of individuality, it's the zodiac sign of uniqueness, and it's the zodiac sign of self. Leo believes that each person makes a difference in life, that each person is an individual, that each person has a unique purpose in life, and that it cannot be duplicated or replicated by anyone else. So when Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo, what it means is that your fortune smiles on you when you are being true to who you are. Now that can be being true to your spirit, that can be being true to your heart, and most especially that can mean being true to those things that make you you. But this can be more challenging than it sounds. Many people may not have the courage to be who they are. Many people may not have the courage to exercise the good that they know that they possess, or to be a role model for something better in a world that embraces the lowest common denominator. And this is where you must have faith in yourself when Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo. You must have faith in yourself if you're going to make the leap from where you are to where you want to be. That's because with Jupiter and Leo, you need audacity to dare, pride to stand firm, and a glorious sense of entitlement that knows that you were meant for greater things. And Leo Jupiters get it. Like a good patron, Jupiter and Leo will open doors and introduce you to golden opportunities. But it's not enough for you to just feel special. You have to be special. That means you have to develop your talent, flesh out those brilliant ideas that you have, and test drive your message so that you can give the world something truly exceptional, so that you can give the world something that comes from you.
Hi, my friends. I hope you're loving this episode. I wanted to tell you about a special free gift that we have available to you because, can you believe it? We're midway through 2026. We spent a lot of time in the beginning of the year talking about the first half of the year, But now we're mid-year, and we wanted to give you a gift, a guide to help you understand the most important astrological transits that are coming up, including Chiron entering Taurus, Jupiter entering Leo, the nodal shift, eclipse season, and so much more. But here's the great thing about this guide. Not only are you going to get an understanding of why these transits are so important, but you're going to get to understand what it means for you personally. We've created a whole section of the guide that enables you to put where these transits are happening in your chart, and then have keywords that help you interpret what it means for where it's happening in your chart. So this is a very comprehensive guide. Like I said, it is free. All you have to do is go to astrologyhub.com/midyear and download your copy right now. Again, astrologyhub.com/midyear. And now back to the episode.
Now, if you're born under Aries or you have Aries rising, Jupiter's translation of light is going to be wonderful for you. The reason for this is because Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo forms a trine to you, Aries. Aries and Leo are both fire signs, and Sagittarius is the third of the 3 fire signs. So Aries is all about getting up and beginning something, going off in search of some sort of battle to win or triumph to experience or mission to serve. All right. And so what happens when you have Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo is that Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo gives you the courage to pursue what you want. And that is something that you could really use right about now. You see, what's going on with Neptune and Saturn, both in your sign, is that you may be experiencing a bit of a confidence problem. Neptune in your zodiac sign is apt to make you feel at sea, like you don't really know where you're going, and you feel like you might even be a bit adrift. And Saturn in your zodiac sign is going to plague you with all sorts of self-doubts and second-guessing. Now, being an Aries or an Aries rising, you're probably not letting on to the fact that this is what's going on inside. In fact, you might be doubling down on your sense of purpose, on your sense of discipline, and your focus. You know, people might be looking at you and saying, wow, you really know what you're doing in life and where you're going. And you may be presenting like that with Saturn and Neptune being in your own zodiac sign. But that doesn't mean that that's what you're experiencing on the inside. What you may be experiencing on the inside is no idea of where you're going, and that you feel like you're carrying burdens and responsibilities that might be heavier than you could possibly bear. But being an Aries, you would never let on. You would never say, this is too much for me, or I can't bear this. In fact, being an Aries or an Aries rising, you're likely to do the opposite, which is to say, this burden, this responsibility, this isn't any big thing. Ha ha! I can carry 10 times these. And of course, everyone's going to go and say, oh my goodness, of course you can. You have such large, brawny shoulders. Wow, Aries, you really are the superhero of the zodiac. But like many superheroes, you have a lot of sense of self-doubt at the end of the day. After you performed those rescues and battled those supervillains, you might have a sense or a question of where's all this going? I mean, am I going to do nothing but rescue babies from burning buildings and battle supervillains who plot against me? There's got to be something more to life than that. And so again, Jupiter in Leo is here to remind you of the joys of life, of the pleasures of life, of the things that would make you very, very happy. Being an Aries, you have a tendency to postpone the things that would make you happy. You feel like if you got joy or delight or reward in your life, that it would make you soft, that it would make you complacent, that you would lose your fighting edge or your drive to go further than you've ever gone before. And so these are the things that people with Aries or Aries rising have a tendency to invest in. You know, you'd rather be looking ahead to the next challenge than to the next trophy. Indeed, trophies may even embarrass you because there's all this recognition that's coming your way. People are throwing flowers at you and celebrating you in poetry and song. And you're like, enough of that. Lead me back to the arena. I've got another obstacle to. So what Jupiter's here to do is to show you the things that give you pleasure in life, to make you feel not guilty about getting them, and to even show you that the more that you achieve or the more that you win, the more that you advance your own interests in your own life, the more that you become a better version of you. And this isn't a selfish thing. This is a heroic thing. One of the most beautiful things that people born under Aries or who have Aries rising can share with all of us in the world is their heroism and their ability to sacrifice, to make the tough choices that nobody else will make. One of the things that you're going to have to get used to, though, during this translation of light, is that the Mars energy isn't going to be as strong as you really want it to be. In other words, you feel like you're advancing forward in your life, but you don't really have a clear idea as to where you're going. And if you think of the Knights of the Round Table, for instance, who were always sent out on missions and escapades to slay dragons and rescue princesses and find things like holy grails, the Knights of the Round Table didn't really have the clearest idea of where they were going. They know that they would venture out, that they had a mission or an errand, or something like that to do, but they didn't really have a clear idea as to how this was all going to unfold. One of the beautiful things about Neptune traveling through your sign, especially when it's forming a trine to Jupiter, is that there's a kind of trust in the hidden energies of your life. There's a trust that things are leading you somewhere, that your soul is answering some call to a higher spirit, a call to be a better version of yourself, a call to be a role model for other people in the world. And by being a role model to other people in the world, you will get a very powerful sense of your own higher purpose. So the thing is, you're not really going to know where you're going. You kind of have to sort of trot along and see what's up in the big dark forest, okay? But as this goes on, as these things unfold, you will get a clearer idea of what your purpose is. So not only will you discover where this path or this adventure is leading, but what you will also discover is yourself as a result of the adventures and the experiences you will be going through during this translation of light. If you're born under Taurus or you have Taurus rising, this period of time that Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo is going to be a bit of a challenge for you. Now, the technical reason for why it's going to be a challenge for you is because the two zodiac signs form a square in the sky. Taurus is the fixed sign of spring. So basically, it's during the period of time when the sun is in Taurus that spring has sprung, that those blossoms that we saw on the trees are starting to bring green leaves and things are starting to fruit and ripen. They're not there yet, but they're starting to, and roses are beginning to open and to bloom. So Taurus rules over that part of the calendar year, that part of the agricultural year in which spring has sprung. This is very different from the time of year that Leo rules over. Leo does have residence in the season of plenty, which is the summer, but Leo can also be a period of time where the sun is too hot, as many of us are experiencing these days in the summer. Okay, where the sun is hot to the point where it might be stifling growth rather than encouraging it. It's too much. So even though summer is traditionally associated with the season of plenty, particularly when the sun is moving through the zodiac sign of Cancer, sometimes by the time it gets to Leo, it's a little bit too much sun. It's a little bit too much heat, and the things that were once growing and responding to the heat are now maybe shriveling and burning. All right, so this is kind of the idea of the square. Taurus is an energy that gets things up and going, and Leo is an energy where things are supposed to be set, where they are at their highest level. And that can be producing most abundance, but that can also be a time of year where things might be hot, bordering on or stepping over the threshold into too hot and maybe even stifling. Another place where the two zodiac signs square is that Taurus is associated to work. Taurus is the bull, and this was domesticated into becoming a farm animal, where the bull essentially became a beast of burden. Whereas Leo, which is represented by the lion, was never domesticated. Okay, the lion is wild. It lives outside the farm. It lives outside the city. If anything, it might attack cattle and take it down. So there's a wildness and an independence and a freedom to the roaming lion that the bull doesn't experience. The bull is put in a stable, it pulls at a plow, it does hard work. All right, so this is kind of the difference between the two of them. We can translate this into your solar horoscope as basically a clash between your sense of duty, work, and obligation and your growing sense of being special, of being different, of maybe even throwing off the yoke. And that's indeed what Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo may be doing. Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo may be saying to you, why are you being a beast of burden? Why are you settling for this? Why are you just going back to the next trudgy task that you have to get done? You were meant for better things. You should be bigger than this. You should be living a life that's truer to who you are. People born under Taurus or who have Taurus rising are earth signs, okay? The Taurus is an earth sign, and the other earth signs are Virgo and Capricorn. And for the earth signs, work, obligation, and responsibility are important things. Earth signs really want people to rely on them, to depend on them. And they want to be the zodiac signs that deliver. They want to be the zodiac signs that work really hard and enjoy the results of their labors, the fruit of their labors at the end of the day. That's where they see their reward. Because when you work hard, you get paid. And when you get paid, you can afford a house and a bed to sleep in at night and a roof over your head. And these are really, really good things. You have a quality of life. Whereas Leo energy can be more along the lines of, well, I'm special and I should have these things and someone might take care of me, or I might find this in my adventures and experience as myself. I'm very special and I'm worth top dollar or top price, and I will get those things through my confidence and my uniqueness and my fiery spirit. Well, people born under Taurus and Taurus rising aren't really going to bet the ranch on that, okay? And so that idea of just sort of being entitled to it is an almost alien concept to them. If we dig down a little deeper, it's more like they understand work and working hard for something, and even though they might complain about it, they enjoy it. It's where they really come to life. So here you have a conflict between your obligations and your responsibilities, and this maybe inner growing sense inside of you that life may be passing you by, that your talents aren't being utilized, that the things you aspire to aren't being followed, that those dreams that you had when you were younger aren't being realized in your life, that maybe you traded in security for being true to yourself and those talents. Like I said before, Jupiter in Leo is going to reward you if you are true to yourself. And what Jupiter in Leo is asking you to do is perhaps take a talent off the shelf. In other words, maybe you were talented at something earlier in your life and you said to yourself, I can't make money at this. And so you stowed it away on a shelf in the garage or something like this. Or maybe you used to practice music in some way, but it wasn't paying the bills. And so you stopped practicing the music. Or maybe there were a number of other things that you enjoyed doing in your life that you didn't really pursue or develop because they weren't going to pay the bills. What Jupiter in Leo is going to confront you with is who's making the decision to not pursue that now? Is it your circumstances? Is it your sense of responsibility and obligation? Is it perhaps you? And Jupiter in Leo is going to leave you with a bit of an unsettling question, which is, You are in charge of your life. The decisions you are making are the decisions you decided to make. And if you want to make new decisions or different decisions, then this is the time to make them. So as I was saying before, this energy is a squaring energy. It may feel like it's contradicting or challenging the things that you believe in, the things that you have built up for yourself. But the beauty of Jupiter is that it is not a planet which is just like, do what I say or else, or forget it. Jupiter in mythology was the only god who could sire new gods from his own body. All right, this is mythology here, but when it was prophesied, for instance, that as Jupiter had overthrown Saturn, that Jupiter in turn would be overthrown by one of his children, Jupiter swallowed Metis, the goddess of wisdom, and from Jupiter's head burst the goddess Athena. Now, it had been prophesied that a son would overthrow Jupiter, like Jupiter had overthrown Saturn. So what's kind of fascinating here is that you see this transexing of that idea, that Athena is very much a woman, but she's clad in battle armor, and she's ready to fight anything, and she's more male than most men would be, okay? And she's also the goddess of wisdom. Anyway, Athena is born from Jupiter's head, just like Dionysus, who's another god that transexes. He's very feminine in his appearance, and he's the god of wine. Dionysus is born from Jupiter's thigh. So this idea of new ideas being born from the body of Jupiter is really important to understanding Jupiter as a planet. But it's also really important to understanding the idea of reinventing, the idea of integrating, the idea of working with what could be disparate energies and producing something new. So this translation of light isn't happening just to, torment you. This translation of light is saying, hey, what about those things that once used to matter to you? Hey, what about those things that you say you can't do? Maybe there's a way that you can find to do them. You don't have to make a living off them or anything like that, but maybe you want more of that in your life, or who knows? Maybe you might find that you are really talented at this and maybe you can make a living at it. But don't say, I'm not going to do this because it doesn't pay. Say, I want to do this because I always enjoyed this. This is something that gave me great love and pleasure. This is something that really felt like me. Because the more that something feels like you, the more that Jupiter and Leo will reward it. And that's definitely something to keep in mind as this translation of light working with Jupiter takes place from July 20th and 21st, and then culminates with its trine to Saturn on August 31st. If you're born under Gemini or you have Gemini rising, Jupiter's translation of light is going to be wonderfully beneficial to you. The reason for this is because Jupiter is in the zodiac sign of Leo, which is a fire sign, and you were born under Gemini, which is an air sign. And although they are not the same element, which is what a trine would be, they are air and fire, which are both regarded as yang elements in astrology or masculine energies in astrology. So what happens with air and fire is that they not only sympathize one another, they not only get one another, but they encourage one another. They get one another to do more than they would do on their own. And they do this in a collaborative way. They do this in a conversational way. Now, if this was a trine aspect, what you would be getting would be unconditional support. Like, for instance, Uranus in Gemini forms a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. Okay, these are two air signs. They trine. So the revolutionary ideas that you're experiencing right now, these innovative thoughts and different ways of doing things, finds a receptive audience with Pluto in the zodiac sign of Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius says, hey, that's a really good idea. Let's go ahead and do it. So Pluto in Aquarius is going to go ahead and implement those Uranian ideas that you're having right now. What makes a sextile different? Jupiter, remember, is in Leo, a fire sign, and you have Uranus in Gemini, an air sign. What makes a sextile different is a sextile will say to you, that's a really good idea, but I think there's a way that we can make it better. And so you might be like, make it better. This is a terrific idea. I want to run with it. But the Jupiter in Leo might be like, we can make it better. Let's talk about that. What if you were to do this or that or the other thing? What if you made this more about the direction you wanted to go in? Maybe if you had more skin in the game or more commitment to how you wanted to see things work out according to your vision. Maybe that's what needs to happen. The sense of it being a signature work of yours, a sense of it belonging to you or having your name on it. What about adding that to what you have in mind instead of just throwing it on out there into the marketplace of ideas? How about you shepherding it through yourself, not handing it off to someone else, but you shepherding it through yourself and you being responsible for where it goes? What about that? And as a Gemini or Gemini rising, you might be like, I didn't even think about that. I thought I was just going to sort of implement this idea, but the idea of it like having my name and me being in charge of it and me making sure that it gets from the beginning to the end, wow, that could be like really exciting. So Jupiter in Leo gives you the confidence of that. It gives you the courage of that. And it also gives you a little bit of the audacity of that, of you stamping your name on it and saying, you know what, this is mine. This was my idea. And maybe being a little less air about it. Air signs have a tendency to be more, we collaborated, I worked with this person, this is something we all came up with together. And it's the Jupiter in Leo that says, we collaborated on my idea and I chose these people to work on this and this was my vision of it and I want to see it go all the way through. So this is something that the Jupiter in Leo can add to the dynamic of that Uranus being in Gemini. What also happens as a result of the translation of light, remember that Jupiter is going to be sextiling the Uranus after it trines the Neptune and opposes the Pluto. What also happens here is that the Jupiter in Leo is showing you your higher purpose in terms of what it is you're doing. Now, ever since Uranus entered your zodiac sign, which technically was last year, and then it came back into your sign this year, Uranus is the planet of revolution and change. And usually when it enters a zodiac sign, what it does is that it knocks over the game board and sends all the pieces flying. So in other words, imagine that you're playing chess with someone and you're both like concentrated on which piece you're going to move and where it goes. And let's say a third person comes in and kicks over the game board and sends all the pieces flying. You're like, you're taken out of your focus and you're like, what happened? So Uranus, when it enters the sign, turns everything upside down, inside out, and it changes all the rules. And what can happen when Uranus comes into your sign at first is that it's like a cyclone, pulling up the fixtures of your life by their roots and throwing them wherever into this cyclonic wind. Now, what changes when we have a sextile to Neptune and a sextile to Jupiter and a trine to Pluto, which is the way that this translation of light looks to you from a Gemini place or a Gemini rising place, what happens is that there's this idea that a plan is emerging, that instead of an accidental circumstance or an unexpected discovery, the accidental circumstance leads to another step, which makes you realize that you're on a road or a path to somewhere, that it wasn't so accidental or one-off, that it might be a clue to thinking more systemically or more in lines of following a certain path or a certain way of thinking. Or let's say an unpredictable discovery leads to an epiphany and a revelation, and you see that there's more at work. Geminis can have a tendency to go from one thing to another in terms of what has seized their curiosity and what they find interesting, okay? And so it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like crossing a river by hopping from one rock to another, to another, to another, okay? And Geminis kind of delight in that. It's like, I'm going to hop to this idea and that idea and the next idea, and I've gotten across the river, okay? That's one way of crossing a river. Another way of crossing a river might be building a bridge, Okay, and that involves architectural plans and lumber and resources and, building a sort of bridge so that you can cross the river multiple times, that you can have people crossing the bridge over that river or traffic crossing the bridge over that river, and you can charge them for that and make money and all sorts of things. So what we do is that we go from sort of like hopping from rock to cross the river to building a bridge and charging a toll and making some money and getting somewhere in your life. Okay, so that's kind of what's happening here. Now, I'm not saying that you're like building a bridge or anything like that. What I'm saying is that what might have been either the wild and crazy unpredictability of Uranus or the revelations of Uranus, but not really knowing how they all together come together when you have this translation of light. It's kind of like looking at the stars at night and as dots, as glowing dots, and drawing lines, connecting the dots and seeing that it's a constellation or it makes a star, and then that lends itself to a star map. Okay, these are Uranian ideas. They're big ideas that can sort of flash, into our life. They can sort of have a strobe light effect. They appear as epiphanies in our light. But if we have other planetary energies at work where we can start connecting the ideas, we can start to make a plan. We can start to create a map. We can figure out a way to get from here to there, in a way that's very deliberate and may even produce results like exercising a toll on people to cross your bridge. So this is the sort of thing that Jupiter's translation of light is bringing into your life. This idea of connecting the dots to seeing that there's a greater plan at work in your life and getting excited about it. Now it may demand things like discipline and commitment. That's the Pluto and Aquarius part, looking at things in the long term. Okay. And that's what you sort of get when the translation of light ends with the Jupiter trine to Saturn. It's going to be a more disciplined and committed approach to things. But the potential of this being even more fulfilling, the potential of this being even more exciting, as you really sort of go from one level to another level in your life, is very strong and it's very powerful. Plus, you may find that you're becoming more of an influential figure as a result. So this particular translation of light that Jupiter is going through from July 20th until August 31st can be very fortuitous for you, but it's more than just a lucky break. It may deliver to you a map or a strategy of the way ahead and something that you're going to enjoy following and also benefiting from. If you're born under Cancer or you have Cancer rising, you've probably been struggling a lot with Neptune and Saturn being in that part of your solar chart that pertains to your midheaven. To have Neptune and Saturn at the top of your solar horoscope like they are can be very burdensome, and you can feel very much weighed down by responsibilities, tasks, and challenges that are larger than you. They may even feel like they're larger than life. And so there's a heaviness that's going on when you look into your future. There's a heaviness that's happening when you think of the responsibilities and the burdens that you have to bear. And as a result, because these two planets are appearing in the zodiac sign of Aries, there can also be a sense of aloneness, of being apart, that there's no support in what it is that you're doing. I mean, you may be surrounded by loved ones and friends who are very supportive of you and they want to be there for you, but that doesn't really break through that sense of solitude that Saturn at the top of the solar horoscope can bring. There's a kind of melancholia. There's a sort of solitude, a sense that, I wish I could rely on you, or I wish I could turn to you for support, but that support isn't really lasting. It doesn't really make a difference. I still return to this feeling of heaviness and of isolation, and that nobody gets it, and that I am alone with all of this. That is, as you might imagine, not a happy place for someone born under Cancer or who has Cancer rising to be. your happy place is opening up the food stores and serving food on the table and opening up your doors and welcoming people into your life and sharing hospitality and good times with the people that you love and adore. You want to share the benefits of your life. You want to share the fruits of your labor. And you want to feel that way that we all feel at the beginning of summer, which is very carefree and like we want to go on vacation and find ways to restore ourselves and who we are, that our spirits and souls feel very parched and dry and overworked. But when you have Neptune and Saturn in your solar midheaven, there's that feeling that whatever you try to do to alleviate that, it's not going to be alleviated, that it just feels heavier and that just feels more solemn and that the future may even look darker. So, thank heavens that Jupiter has entered the zodiac sign of Leo. And the entrance of Jupiter into the zodiac sign of Leo is going to change the dynamic of all of this. It's going to change the architecture of the stars as it was before. So when Jupiter enters the zodiac sign of Leo, and it's been there since June 30th, it is forming a trine to the Neptune, and eventually on August 31st, it will form a trine to the Saturn. But to begin with, it forms a trine to the Neptune. And what you may experience with this trine to Neptune is maybe it's time to lose some of those obligations and responsibilities. Maybe you've been carrying a lot on your shoulders, and it's time to say, enough of this, enough of that. I want a lighter weight. Okay, so that's how the trine can work. You know, the trine being in fire has no reservations about getting rid of anything that's a downer. Okay, that fire energy is like, wow, that person's a downer. Get rid of the relationship. Wow, that responsibility is making me feel suffocated. Get rid of the responsibility. Well, that burden is really burdensome and a real drag. Get rid of the burden. Okay, fire signs have this wonderful audacity of just jettisoning those things that are downers or that are bringing them down. The water signs might respond with, oh my God, how shocking, or how can you do this, or how can you throw that person over the side of the ship like that, you know? But fire signs will do it, you know, because it's getting in the way. It's bringing them down. And it's not because fire signs are like, I need to be up, up, up. Fire signs are driven by the element of fire. They need to be burning hot. They need to be passionate. They need to be excited. They need to be enthusiastic. You know, they need to have a positive view of the world. And anything that is snuffing that out or diminishing it is a drag and needs to be gotten rid of, needs to be burned up in the fire immediately. And so that might be some of what you're experiencing with this first trine between Jupiter and Neptune. The idea that, you know what, I don't have to be pinned down by this. I don't have to take any of this. And so there might be a sort of marvelous, I don't know, recklessness that is flooded through your life. But at some point, you're going to have a sobering moment. And that sobering moment will occur when the sun, no sooner does it form that trine to Neptune, forms in opposition to Pluto in the zodiac sign of Aquarius, in that part of your solar chart that deals with sex, death, and other people's money. Yes, that is the rock band house of astrology. It always reminds me of a 1980s CBGB punk rock band, sex, death, and other people's money. Basically, this house is a very complex and complicated house, but what this house really hits upon or triggers in us is a sense of mortality. It's a sense of having a brush up against a shortcoming or a difficulty or a drawback that could cost, that could create a lot of difficulty for us. Basically, we live our lives with a sense of mortality being at bay. You know, some of us think about our mortality all the time, okay, but most of us don't. Most of us have a lifestyle. Most of us have things to do, bills to pay, children to take care of, sports and delights to exercise and enjoy. Okay, and so that's what we busy ourselves with. But whenever you have a planet that's transiting that part of your solar chart, which is the 8th house, you have these brushes with mortality, this sense that none of this lasts forever, and it can sort of send a chill down the spine of your own horoscope. And this is essentially what Pluto has been doing in your 8th house. You might actually be experiencing situations in which people who are close to you are dealing with health matters or very difficult situations. You might be experiencing areas in your life in which sex or sexuality is being challenged or thwarted in some way. Now, some people might be like, well, what does sex and sexuality have to do with mortality? And sex and sexuality has a lot to do with mortality outside Tristan and Isolde, okay, the Liebestod. There's another element involved. And what that element is that sex deals with, that sex in heterosexual relationships, for instance, deals with reproduction, the continuance of life after you pass. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that sex itself is a life force. Okay, it's something that asserts life and living in the face of death. Okay, and it can be something that's regarded as very necessary, something that keeps us alive and keeps us going. It's also something that's regarded as a bit taboo, or it could become out of control, or sex, if out of control, can ruin your life because it brings in someone who tempts or cheats or absconds with someone that you love. So there can be a dangerous side to sex, and then there can be a very life-affirming side to sex. Okay, that's me talking about sex in the 8th house, but how those brushes with that can bring up that sense of loss or gain, vitality, or diminishing, but let's also bring in the idea of finances. Okay, finances are something that we need in order to feel secure. We all want to prosper. We want good health, so that we can live a very long and wonderful, pleasurable life. And we also want good wealth so that we can take care of ourselves, that we can take care of the people that we love and adore, that we can feel protected and secure, that we're not living in a house made out of straw or a house made out of wood that a big bad wolf can come and blow down, that the house we're living in is brick and it's impregnable and nothing is going to blow it down. So the 8th house can carry a lot of our anxieties and fears and apprehensions around these different areas of our life that we feel can maybe overrun our life or become a danger or can become a horrible loss. So when you have Jupiter opposite Pluto, like you will have during this translation of light, there can be this feeling that you're staring at one of the issues that I've described in very stark, uncompromising terms, that there's an absolute polarity, that something from what I described as appearing as a threat, either a threat to overwhelm or a threat to take away, that you might be going through an ordeal or something that really questions your sense of security or makes you feel that chill in your horoscope. But thankfully, the Jupiter trines that Neptune in Aries that I talked about, and that Jupiter also forms a sextile to Uranus in another very sensitive area of your horoscope, which deals with the 12th house. That's a very long explanation, but I'm going to basically water it down to the life of the soul is the 12th house. And the life of the soul can be experienced both darkly and in illumination and in light. But usually one goes through difficulties in order to access that 12th house. The 12th house can also deal a lot with putting to rest the skeletons in the family closet, or putting to an end what some people describe as a family curse, something that's been passed down through the generations. So this is kind of a heavy time for people who are born under Cancer or who have Cancer rising. But this is also that fiery time where you can throw off what you want to throw off, or you can burn up those skeletons in the family closet. But what it's getting you to do is to really put your faith in the things that you have set up in your life. Jupiter in Leo is in that part of your solar chart that deals with money and finances. So there's a little bit more going on than, a business plan about how to succeed in your life. What's going on here is a sense of ownership. What's going on here is a faith in yourself that you can generate and make money. Now, a lot of times that sounds like, okay, generate and make money. Like, where's the profundity to that? There is profundity to that. Many times people can feel stuck in a job that they don't like. Many times people can feel like money has the stronger hand in their life than they do. Like they're a slave to money, or they're a servant to money, or they're working for the money, or they're making sacrifices out of money. And what Jupiter in Leo is saying by rekindling that money-making ability in yourself, it's really talking about your ability to take care of yourself. You know, Jupiter is saying, have faith in your ability to provide. Have faith in your ability to create that house of brick that everyone comes running to when their houses of straw and wood have been laid low by the big bad wolf. Have faith in your ability to produce, to work the farm, to work the land and produce fruits and vegetables. Now, you might be like, I don't want anything to do with fruits or vegetable, but I'm using it allegorically because Cancer is the ruler of the summer, which is the season of abundance here in the Northern Hemisphere. Astrology comes from the Northern Hemisphere, which is why the seasons in the Northern Hemisphere inform so much about the character of the zodiac signs themselves. So by having faith in your life, in the here and now, okay, because we're also talking about fire and Leo, which is a very here and now type of element, by having your faith in your ability to produce in your life in the here and now, that's going to give you the strength of living the life that you're living now. And that doesn't mean that you face these things and overcome them. It means that you can face these things and find ways to integrate them into your life. Jupiter was always associated to wisdom, you know, and part of its translation of light is by absorbing the gifts that Uranus with its enlightenment, that Neptune with its inspiration, that Pluto with its evolution, the idea of rebirth and evolution, the gifts that it has to give. And finally, on August 31st, that trine to Saturn, which is the application. But you need to have the faith first. And faith is often strengthened by the difficult times that you go through. It's not strengthened by just, repeating mantras or prayers or anything like that. And I'm not putting down prayer, for instance. Prayer is an incredibly centering ritual and exercise. And if prayer leads to that kind of reflection, then that's a beautiful expression of prayer. I guess what I was trying to do was distinguish the difference between prayer as recitation and prayer as a profound reflection. So by following that path, that placing your faith in that gives you not only a strength to face the things that you're facing, but it gives you the ability to work with and create and to absorb the things that you're facing so that you don't feel alone, that you're not outside anyone's comfort or company or consolation, that this is all part of life and living. And the more that you can own the experience of life and living, the more enriching and the more rewarding it's going to be. If you're born under Leo or you have Leo rising, Jupiter's translation of light is going to be electrifying for you. This is going to be an extraordinary series of aspects that are going to benefit you in the end. Now remember that Jupiter is the planet of faith and belief, and that by having faith in yourself and by having belief in yourself, these are the things that fortune will smile upon. So it's this idea that if I am true to myself, if I'm true to my heart, if I'm true to my spirit, if I'm true to my mission in life, then fortune will smile on me. And that's true. Fortune will indeed smile on you. But it can't be true to yourself in terms of like, this is what I think and I'm not going to listen to anyone else. It can't be true to yourself in, I'm going to just sort of express what I'm feeling and everyone else has to deal with it. It can't just be my way or the highway or anything along those lines. This isn't a Jupiter transit that's dealing with your sign by itself. Your sign is linked to other zodiac signs like Aries and Gemini and Aquarius. And so basically what this translation of light is doing is that it's pushing you out into the world, and it's pushing you out into the world to experience people in a way that's different from the way that you're used to experiencing them before. So in other words, what Jupiter is doing is that it's making you wiser about who you are. It's making you respect the contribution that people have to make to your life. Jupiter was the god of wisdom, and the way that Jupiter gained this wisdom was by swallowing Metis, the goddess of wisdom, and giving birth to their daughter Athena from his head. Basically, this was mythological symbolic speak for that wisdom is something that you gain and that you acquire, and that illuminates your mind, and it goes on to guide you through your life. So wisdom isn't based on, me and what I think about things, and that's great. That would be more of a solar type of energy. Wisdom, being Jupiterian, is about absorbing things that are different from it into its body and creating or recreating or giving birth to new forms. So there's an interaction that takes place with Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of integration. Indeed, in Greek mythology, Zeus was the planet of weaving, all right? And it was this idea that you took the different strands, the different colored threads, and you wove them into a tapestry. This was something that was celebrated in the ancient Greek ritual of marriage, where the idols of Zeus and Hera would be wrapped together by cloth or by some sort of woven textile. This was commemorated by Athena, who was born from Zeus's head, becoming the goddess of weaving and tapestry. This was also noted in Jupiter's association with the Fates, who wove the threads or spun out the threads of people's lifespans. But this was also exercised in Zeus's association to the polis, the city-state. Democracy. The whole idea of democracy was that it was a city made up of different people with different points of view, different perspectives, different status in life, and that everyone should be heard. And so democracy is kind of like a tapestry of disparate voices and personalities that are woven together. Indeed, it's where we get our phrase social fabric. So what happens here is that with Jupiter going through your own zodiac sign and forming a trine to Neptune and Aries, and even a sextile to Uranus and Gemini, is that your margins are widening. You're getting a new sense of life, which is broader than what you've had before. A sense of life which is perhaps informed by the people around you, where you are listening to the things that they have to say. You're listening to their stories. You're experiencing them in a way that you've never really experienced them before. Part of that Neptune trine to your Jupiter and Leo is going to be this feeling that you're being called to something higher. Okay, that your higher purpose has delivered a calling card to you, and it's got its name written on it. It's asking you to maybe even leave the life you've set up for yourself and to journey somewhere else to experience your higher purpose. You definitely want more of a width and breadth of experience in your life. You might be feeling very cobbled or hobbled or stuck in a niche that or a rut that has lost its greater meaning for you, and you want something more. You long for something more. And these are good things. But that Jupiter in Leo is opposite the Pluto in Aquarius. And what you may be feeling right now is that your individuality is being squashed in some way. It's being snuffed in some way. You might feel out of sync with the society that you enjoy. You might feel out of step with friends. You might feel suddenly like loved ones just don't get you. Or you might feel like you're moving on a different track than everyone else is. And that can happen when you have an opposition between Jupiter in Leo and Pluto in the zodiac sign of Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius can have a kind of anonymity, that, we're living in some sort of technological world right now where we've all lost our souls and identities and we're anonymous and we're all part of some, I don't know, Borg hive or something like that from Star Trek. Okay, which is, of course, the great horror for anyone born under Leo or as Leo rising. I'm not saying that a Borg ship is going to show up and assimilate you or anything along those lines. It's more like you may be feeling in your life more and more like you're not being seen for who you are, or that your belief in yourself is wavering, and that you might be kind of even compensating for it in some way. The point is not to go off by yourself. The point is to join with other people. This is what the sextile to Uranus, which ultimately trines the Pluto in Aquarius, is all about. The world that you face nowadays may make you feel very small, or maybe even inconsequential, that you don't really make a difference in it. And the fact of the matter is, you're Leo or Leo rising, and you have Jupiter traveling through your sign, and you make a difference. You will always make a difference, but you may feel like you don't make a difference in the way that you used to make it before. And this is where Pluto opposite you, but its energy is being communicated to you through refraction, through its trine to Uranus and its sextile to Neptune, which trines you. It's a bit of a pinball machine there, but, bouncing around. But Pluto's message to you is that you do make a difference, but you may not make it in the way that you used to. That your way of making a difference has become old or tired or it doesn't suit you, which is why it's not expressing itself with that same fervor or that same excitement or that same belief that it did before. So what's being asked of you is to reinvent yourself in some way. Now, a lot of times when we hear the word reinvent, it can sound a little intimidating, like, okay, I better come up with something new. It's kind of like, someone turning down your proposal for a story and saying, try something else, and you have to pitch another idea. That's not what's being asked of you here. Reinvent is going to be done through that Neptune trine to your sign. In other words, and this is similar to what I was saying to people born under Aries or who have Aries rising, you don't know the steps on the path right now. You know that you're kind of on a path, or there's a sense that your life is heading somewhere, but it's somewhere that's foreign or different. It doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel familiar. And that's the whole point. Your essence, your essential mission in life, right, which is to make a difference, is still the same. But the way that you thought you were making a difference isn't who you are right now. You've changed. You're in the process of changing and growing as a person. And so I think what I'm sort of saying is that you have to sort of give up that title or that label of the way that you made a difference. Maybe it was your persona or your identity or your job or your career or something like that. You're not going to make a difference like that anymore because you've moved into, you're giving birth to a new you, that is wiser and more experienced. And so the way that you're going to make a difference is changing. It's changing for the better. And it's more of an expression of you. So what you have to do is not second guess it or overthink it or figure out where you're going. You have to sort of let it be and let yourself sort of drift along this current or follow this path that you're not quite sure is leading anywhere. You need to have faith in that. And the more that you have faith in that, the more that you'll get out of your own way and let yourself grow in a direction that's probably very different and probably very unexpected of where you thought you would be right now in your life. But once you let yourself go and follow that impulse, you're going to find that this journey is not only invigorating and reaffirming of you, but that journey is leading you to a truer you, and even perhaps I dare say a better you than the one who existed before. If you're born under Virgo or you have Virgo rising, Jupiter's translation of light is going to be a little awkward for you. Okay, it's not that it's going to be bad or anything along those lines. It's actually very, very good, but it's going to be a bit awkward for you because it's taking place in different parts of your consciousness that you're not as familiar or as comfortable with. Actually, let me go ahead and cut to the chase. It's taking place in that part of you that deals with the woo-woo, as one would say nowadays. Now, being a Virgo or Virgo rising, you have a very strong spiritual life, and you're very much attracted to spiritual pursuits. You know, you enjoy learning about a different religion or a different way of being or a different way to improve your body and mind and spirituality. Okay, and as a Virgo or a Virgo rising, you like to sort of have that mapped out in front of you, especially having just arrived on the other side of a 12-year stay of Neptune in your opposite sign of Pisces, where things probably got a little bit too out there as far as you were concerned, because you had Neptune traveling opposite your zodiac sign since about, I think it's 2011 or 2012, and it just recently went into the zodiac sign of Aries. So you've had a period of time where you've felt at sea. You've had a period of time where you have felt at the beck and call of invisible forces or agencies in your life. You've probably had some very deep and profound psychic and soulful experiences, and some of them were good, but many of them might have been very bewildering or exacted heavy tolls on you. As a Virgo, you need to know what to make of what it is that you're facing. You're born under an earth sign. So as an earth sign, you need to give shape to something. You need to be able to craft an idea or an image or a solution if it's a problem. You can't just be faced with, an overwhelming invisibility and silence of mystery where it doesn't communicate anything to you or you don't have anything to do with it. That can make you feel very uncomfortable. With Jupiter now moving into the zodiac sign, or actually Jupiter is already in the zodiac sign of Leo, what it is that Jupiter is that part of your solar chart that deals with the life of the soul. What you may be experiencing right now is this question of faith and belief that's different from what you've ever really asked of life or whatever deity you worship or acknowledge before. You want a sense of purpose. You desire a sense of purpose, but you're not sure perhaps that you're getting it, that it's speaking directly to you. It would be nice if you could be Moses and go out into the desert and be spoken to by a burning bush. That would be great. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is more like a tug, is more like a push, is more like a nudge, that there's something greater going on in your life than you can possibly describe or understand right now. And what you might be feeling as a result is a feeling of loss or a feeling of soulful exhaustion or a sense of like, I tried all these different spiritual paths before, they didn't do anything for me, so why am I trying again? So, and this is because Jupiter in the zodiac sign of Leo is adjacent to you. So that means that Jupiter isn't speaking directly to you, but it's speaking in an indirect fashion. It's almost like light being directed to you by a series of mirrors. You're not looking at the actual light itself, but at a reflection of it. So with Jupiter forming a sextile to Uranus and a trine to Neptune, what Jupiter in Leo is asking you to do is to have faith in the unknown and the unpredictable. In other words, you already know as a Virgo rising, you don't have to have the answers, and you embrace that as an ethic or as something to follow. But what the planet is actually really asking of you is to have faith in the unpredictable and the unknown. Right now, you have Uranus at the top of your solar chart, okay? And what Uranus is doing is that it's changing all the rules that have to do with your career or where you felt like you were heading in life or what you thought your life was going to be all about. As an earth sign, that can be very unsettling. We don't want changes in our career. We don't want an unpredictable shift or twist or turn. We want to commit ourselves to an objective, to an aim. And even if it takes us 5, 10, 15, 20 years to get there and to perfect our craft and to rise through the ranks and be promoted, we know that there's a plan in front of us, that this is where this is all going. When you have Jupiter at this particular angle of your solar horoscope, it's asking you to have faith in the unknown and the unpredictable. In other words, don't be so married to those plans. And you might even be being asked to leave those plans, which of course is unheard of. If you're born into Virgo or Virgo rising, it's like, I've got an open mind, I think about things, but if you're asking me to walk away from my plans or the way I see it all working out, that's asking a lot, okay? And just sort of wing it on something woo-woo or, some sort of invisible agency in my life or something like that, no, thank you. And we're not really asking you to do that, but we're asking you to do is to take into account variables that you haven't worked out ahead of time, variables that you might not even know how to articulate. And the reason I'm sort of going down this path with you is that it's not the danger, but the difficulty that I see for you is in staying with the things that you know, okay? And that could be repeating a formula. That could be repeating a series of steps. That could be going back to something that had always been reliable and trying it once again, And when you stay with the things that you know, what happens is that it forces you to repeat history rather than to be open to the things that you don't anticipate or understand right away with your future. Now, I'm not saying that these experiences are going to transform you in some sort of way. They're not. What it is that when you sort of leave it open space for the unpredictable and the unknown, and they make themselves known, or present in your life, then you can engage and encounter and become educated by them on the present tense terms rather than what you anticipated terms. In other words, when you leave yourself open to spontaneity or chance or this thing that came out of nowhere, you can work with it. It can become something that's creative. It can become something that's enlivening. It can become something that's emboldening. And it can give you a new take on the things that you have become used to. So what's going to happen here is less a sense of like you have to leave your old life behind and, trust in something new and different. It's going to be more along the lines of by not having the answers, you can actually listen to the conversation that's taking place between you and the universe. You can follow the signals and the impulses of the planets. And as you do this, there's more of a sense of discovery and exploration that takes place. This is a transition period, this translation of light, and it's kind of a lead up to Jupiter entering your own sign next year. But at this point, it's really like, almost like what I was sort of saying with people born with Leo or Leo rising before, almost like getting yourself out of the way. But it's not really yourself that you're getting out of the way. It's your expectations or how you've mapped things out or your set priorities. Getting them out of the way and leaving things open-ended. And the more that you can do that, the more that you're going to experience this translation of light as an illuminating experience rather than just turning on a light bulb in the room. It's something in which that as it becomes more luminous in your life, it's not going to explain things as much as things are going to make sense And then, of course, with the translation of lights trying to Saturn on August 31st, you're going to be able to take this knowledge. You're going to be able to take this wisdom. You're going to be able to take these epiphanies, and you're going to be able to apply them to your day-to-day life so that you can marry inspiration with invention and come up with something that's altogether new, but at the same time very usable for you. If you're born under Libra or you have Libra rising, Jupiter's translation of light is going to be a wonderful experience for you. Not only because Jupiter is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo, which is a fire sign and forms a sextile to your own sign, Libra, which is an air sign. And whenever you have a sextile between air and fire, this can be an uplifting experience. This can be an uplifting energy. It's just like, think of a hot air balloon. Okay, you turn on the gas and the flame and it fills the balloon with hot air and it lifts it up and you go soaring up into the sky. This is an example of what a sextile between air and fire can be like. It's this sense that you are being uplifted, that you can see things in a way that you never saw them before, that you're enjoying a bird's eye view of faraway vistas and the ground underneath. So this can be a wonderful experience in and of itself. But what makes it even better is that Jupiter happens to be traveling through that part of your solar chart that is called the 11th house in astrology. And the 11th house in astrology is the house of Jupiter's joy. So what does Jupiter and its joy mean? Well, if you remember planetary dignities, that is the zodiac signs that planets are in, where they either are at home, or they are celebrated, or they feel at a bit of a loose end, or even down and out. Okay, those are planetary dignities. Like, for instance, your planet Venus is at home in the Venus-ruled signs of Taurus and Libra. And then it's in detriment, meaning not as comfortable, in the Mars-ruled signs, like Aries and Scorpio. Venus is most celebrated, exalted in the zodiac sign of Pisces, and it is in fall, meaning unexalted and having not a great time of it in the zodiac sign of Virgo. The reason for that is because, as ancient astrologers used to joke, you don't want the goddess of love in the zodiac sign of the Nun or the Virgin. But anyway, there's more to Venus and Virgo than that, but that's a talk for another time. So that's an example of planetary dignities, what zodiac signs that a planet excels or doesn't do as well in. We have that same idea with the houses in an astrological chart, but these houses are where a planet rejoices regardless of the zodiac sign it's in. So whenever Jupiter is transiting through the 11th house, or if it happens to be placed in the 11th house in your own natal horoscope, Jupiter rejoices in the 11th house. It is in its joy in the 11th house. We all know the 11th house in astrology as being the house of hopes and wishes, and of friends and community, which always sounded like a bit of a ragtag collection of different thoughts and ideas. But what they all have in common is this idea that your hopes and wishes, at least according to Firmicus Maternus, that the realization of your hopes and wishes depended or relied on your friends in high places. So in other words, you could have a certain hope, you could have a certain wish, but if you knew someone who could open a door for you or make an introduction for you or help you out in some way with funding, then you were able to realize your hope and your wish. Okay, so hopes and wishes are contingent on who you know in a more advantageous position than yourself. When you have Jupiter here in the 11th house, then that person becomes a reality. You know that person, or you know someone who knows that person. You know that donor, you know that sponsor, you know that coach or that mentor. There's someone who sees something in you. Maybe it's a talent or an ability, and they're going to promote it. They're going to get behind it. They really think that you have a lot to give the world. And you may not have the most confidence in yourself. You may not see yourself in that way, but this person does. And not only does this person see you in that way, this person is going to show you how to become that person that they see. Now, this can be good insofar as someone's vision of ourselves being higher, being better at something than we see ourselves can be a good thing. Oftentimes, we can inhibit our growth because of we have certain biases or certain beliefs or doubts or we just, it never occurred to us that we would become, I don't know, a major chef in a French restaurant or something one day. But the fact that someone sees in you potential, ability, a talent, and they want to help you refine that and to develop that, that can be a wonderful thing. We can become more than we ever imagined ourselves being before. The downside to that is that this person might have a vision of us that we don't necessarily have of ourselves. In other words, this person might think that we would be great as a chef in a Parisian restaurant. And maybe we thought that we wanted to take up pottery and paint it and things like that. And that we don't want to become a chef in a French restaurant. We want to be a potter and maybe teach other people pottery. But this person is so committed to this idea of us going to Paris and wowing everyone in Paris that we go along with it, that we say yes, that we're like, maybe this person knows better than me. And maybe we become, indeed, as that person said, a great chef in a Parisian restaurant. But at the same time, it wasn't our choice. It wasn't really something that we wanted to do. And so we might feel trapped in a life that we didn't make for ourselves. And that can be the downside to a Jupiter in its joy. In effect, what has happened is that our aspiration has become co-opted by someone else's. And so we're living their dream rather than our own. But thankfully, Jupiter is involved in a translation of light. Okay, so that it's not just going through your 11th house and it's making one statement. Jupiter's translation of light involves a trine to Neptune in Aries and a sextile to Uranus. So what's happening here is that you have other options that are weighing in. You have other routes that this could all go. What it might also signal is that you might have other people who have aspirations or see you doing a number of things, and you might be paying attention to a number of them. It's not just one person who sees that you have this potential. It might be 3 or even 7. Okay, so you may have an abundance of people who want to mentor or sponsor you. You may have an abundance of points of view of what would make you happy. And you may also have an abundance of options and different paths to that happiness. What's wonderful about this, and how it ties in so wonderfully and positively with being born under Libra or having Libra rising, is that if you're born under Libra, you have Libra rising, you're a listener. You're someone who takes in what other people have to say. And then you want to think about it. You want to ponder it. Remember that the symbol for Libra is the scales, the 2 dishes that are joined, and that you weigh something in one dish against something else in another to sort of discern the value of whatever object you're weighing. It can be a monetary value, or it could be a decision that you're making by listening to different sides of the story or different sides of an argument. You weigh things in the balance when you're born under Libra or Libra rising, and that's in order to come at good judgment. What could be the best judgment? And so there are a lot of things that you have to weigh here during Jupiter's translation of light. What I like is that the planets show you really listening and really absorbing it and really forming for yourself your own judgment of how you want to proceed. So this is a wonderful time for you. It's a very promotional time for you. It's a very encouraging time for you. And I think the other thing that I want to add to this is you can also take your own time with what's unfolding here as well. I don't see a real urgency or an overriding need to arrive at a conclusion between July 20th and 21st and August 31st. In fact, you may actually arrive at what your next step is going to be or what path it is that you want to take. But these are very discerning energies, and these are very discriminating energies. And with Jupiter being in Leo and forming a sextile to your own zodiac sign of Libra, there's more of you involved in this. The air signs are very we-oriented. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And they want to do things together, or part of a team, or part of a couple, or part of a group. And this we is this idea that we're in it together. Well, when you're dealing with fire signs, you take the W and we and you turn it upside down and make an M for me. And, that isn't just because fire signs are egotistical or anything like that. What it is that fire signs celebrate individuality. They celebrate the fact that they make the difference in other people's lives as well as their own. They make a difference in this world, the fire signs. It comes out of their actions, their thoughts, their creativity, their acumen. Okay, so having more me in your we is a good thing right now. All right, being able to say that this is my judgment, this is my choice, this is what I want to do, so that the advice that you're receiving during this translation of light isn't pulling you in different directions. The advice that you're receiving during this translation of light is validating certain decisions that you're making. It's you can judge it, you can weigh it, you can say, okay, this is backing up what I was thinking, or this is in contradiction of what I was thinking, so maybe I want to think about that a little bit more, or this is just like way out there and I'm not interested in it at all. So there's a discriminating quality that joins that Leo energy to your Libra energy. So whatever this translation of light might bring in terms of a path that's moving you forward in your life, that is being brought to you through patrons or sponsors or people who have your best interests in mind, remember that you're not just a lump of clay that's being shaped and molded by other people. You have a say in all of this, and that you can say yes, you can say no, as you forge your way through. So you really have the beauty of having the best of all worlds, which is really, I think what I want to communicate to you is the best of all points of view that you can take into account to come up with your own judgment. And this is why I see this translation of light with Jupiter in Leo as being both illuminating and rewarding. If you're born under Scorpio or you have Scorpio rising, this translation of light of Jupiter's is going to be a bit of a heady experience for you. Now, the reason for this is because Jupiter in Leo forms a square to your own zodiac sign of Scorpio. A square between signs means that they have two very different ways of looking at the world. They have two very different approaches to life. Leo, for instance, is ruled by the sun. So it's above board, it's seen. If you see lions in Africa on any of those nature channels, they don't lie under the brush or behind a tree or anything along those lines. They lie out in the plains, the savannas, or if it's a tourist area, they lie in the middle of the road, and people are stuck in their cars looking at the lions as they maybe move or don't move at their own leisure. So basically, lions are out in the open. They lie around wherever they are, they recline wherever they feel like reclining, and everyone else has to deal with it. Okay, so this is a very outgoing sign. This is a very visible sign. This is a very daylight sign. I mean, Leo is, after all, ruled by the sun. This is not Scorpio's way of looking at the world, and this is not Scorpio's way of approaching life. Scorpio is named after the scorpion, which is a nocturnal creature. It looks for dark places. It hides underneath rocks, and it's drawn to heat. Okay, it doesn't really sort of go and hang out wherever it feels like it wants to. It has a tendency more to hide or to lurk or to look for underground places. And that's in conjunction to its two ruling planets, which are Mars and Pluto, particularly Pluto, which tends to be more of a nocturnal type of planet because Pluto is named after the Roman god of the underworld in astrology. And the underworld is that world that exists underneath the ground, the realm that Pluto won when they were casting lots. So Scorpios have a tendency to be very to themselves, to be very private, to not really espouse the limelight. I mean, Scorpios want recognition like anyone else does, but they don't want to sort of like be on show. They don't want to be exposed. they feel very uncomfortable when it comes to something like that. When you have Jupiter in Leo, which would be at the top of your own solar chart, this means that you may feel elevated in some way or rising to some sort of prominence in some way that you didn't have before. And this would be perhaps taking place between July 21st and 22nd, and then the August 31st date, which is when Jupiter completes its translation of light by forming a trine to Saturn. So what you may feel nowadays is that there may be something that you want, okay? And that you're playing for high stakes in the pursuit of it. Or you may feel like there's something that you have to have and that you're playing for high stakes in the accomplishment of it. So what's going on in your life right now isn't trivial. It's not recreational. You feel like there's a lot on the line. And you may also feel like your life is going to change profoundly or dramatically as a result. Now, many times when we think that we're taking a risk or that we're stepping out in some way, that we're throwing our hat in the ring, that the big fear is that we're going to fail, that I'm going to announce that I'm running for office, or I'm going to, or I received an Academy Award nomination, I've been singled out in some way, all eyes are on me. And so the big fear is going to fail, like I run for office and I raise all this money and spend it and I lose miserably. Or I'm nominated for the Academy Award. It's listed off in a name of things, and immediately Meryl Streep wins because she always wins, and the camera goes right to her. Okay, and I'm just like forgotten, yesterday's news or something like that. And that's something that Scorpios or Scorpio risings can be very sensitive to. It's like, oh, great, I'm going to risk it all or be given this opportunity only to fall on my face and be humiliated in front of all of these people. I don't want it, but I want it, type of thing, like, just getting angry already at the rejection that seems to be lying in wait for you. And this can often be the Scorpio response to this type of Jupiter in Leo energy. But what I suspect is really going on, or might be perhaps the deeper fear or anxiety, is how much is my life going to change as a result? All right, the planetary aspects that are being made by this translation of light are furthering the energy of Jupiter. They're promoting the energy of Jupiter. And so Jupiter can bring good things. It can bring a sense of higher purpose, but it can also bring leaving behind what your life was before, and that for a sign like Scorpio, or even a Capricorn or a Virgo, sometimes a Cancer, can be something that this sign worries a lot about, which is my life's going to change and in bigger and more dramatic ways than I thought. And I don't know if I'm on board for that. Okay. Well, this Jupiter in Leo isn't happening on its own or out of nowhere. There's probably been a run up to it. There's probably been a lot of thought. And that's because Pluto has been in Aquarius for a little while now. Uranus has been in and out of Gemini. Neptune has been in and out of Aries. So it's something that you might have approached before, you had been approached with before. Maybe it didn't work out, or it wasn't the right time, or it was a long, stretch of time that you would have to commit to this venture. So this isn't out of the blue or anything new. It's something you've had to think about a lot. And it's something in which you have deliberately, thrown your hat into the ring. And it's something that in all likelihood you're going to get. In all likelihood you're going to achieve. And whether this is a step up into the world, or whether this is a release from a cloud that you were under, or whether this is a reward for having gone through something very difficult, you are going to get what you want, which is good. That's good, but it is also going to change your life in some very profound ways. And that's really where I want to direct your attention to. Okay, the way that it's going to be changing your life. I think one of the ways is that, after the giddy feeling, of getting what you want, will come like the impact of like, wow, a lot of things have to change, or a lot of things are on the line, or I'm exposed or seen or viewed in ways that, I kind of knew would happen, but now that it's here, it's kind of like, it's great to want to be a celebrity until the paparazzi knows that one photograph of you could put their kid through college, and they're all like raiding your house and following you from place to place and making your life miserable. I mean, there's a difference between how it looked from far away and how it is in terms of the reality. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be hounded by paparazzi or anything like that, but what I'm saying is that you're going to be very aware that there's a lot at stake. There was a lot at stake going into this, but now that you've accomplished it, there's a lot at stake. It's like winning that Academy Award or winning that political office, and people are now expecting things from you. Whereas before, it was more going to be a feeling of a trophy or recognition of all you've done. So I think that the sun forming a trine to the Neptune and the sextile to the Uranus is going to help you to adapt. There are going to be people around you who can help you get used to this idea, which is really new for Scorpio because you have a tendency to do things on your own. That Pluto in opposition to Jupiter is going to stay with you for a while because you're going to feel like you're doing a trapeze act without a net underneath. But again, you're a Mars-ruled sign. So at first you might be like, really uncomfortable with it, but then the Mars kicks in, you're like, I'm going to do a triple somersault without a net underneath, or you're going to be like that couple climbing to the top of the Empire State Building, love is peace and things like that, which like, I'm sorry, that was just so fabulous. Okay. So these are the things that, that are going to be part of this translation of light as well. So I think once you sort of get over the nerves and over, how different the world is going to look, I can see you absolutely thriving in this new environment, in this new place that you're going to be in by the fall, or at the longest, the end of the year. I could see this as being something that you really, really do enjoy. It's going to be different for you, a lot of things that you get used to, but it's going to validate so much of what you've done and the sacrifices that you made. But I think more importantly than all of that, it's going to make you feel right. I was right to pursue this. I'm right to have it. Like, it makes for a really good fit. And that is going to be the most enriching and the most rewarding experience of all. If you're born under Sagittarius, or you have Sagittarius rising, Jupiter's translation of light is going to be an extraordinary experience for you. Jupiter is your ruling planet. Now, for me, the ruling planet is the planet that rules over your birth sign. So your ruling planet, to me, is as important as the sun, moon, and the ascendant is. Your ruling planet is your guardian angel, your patron saint, your corporate sponsor, and your den mother, all wrapped up into one. Okay, your ruling planet is always keeping a lookout for you. So you were born under the planet of good fortune and higher purpose. This is something that you've experienced off and on in your life as Jupiter has traveled through all 12 zodiac signs. Now that Jupiter is in the zodiac sign of Leo, it's forming a trine to your own sign, Sagittarius. Trines are good because basically what happens is that a planet that's trining your own sign, that is, the planet is in a sign that shares the same element as you, fire, that planet becomes a supporter of you. It becomes a patron of yours. It gives you unconditional support. It gives you unconditional love. It wants to do the best that it can do to help you be the best person that you can be. You are getting chart support right now from the fact that Jupiter is trining Neptune in Aries and will eventually form a trine to Saturn, which is also in the zodiac sign of Aries. What this does with Jupiter trining Aries is that both the Jupiter in Leo and the Saturn and Neptune in Aries are trining your own zodiac sign of Sagittarius. What that basically translates to is that you are living under a 3-point triangle, okay? And that this 3-point triangle is called a grand trine in astrology. Grand trines are enormously beneficial. They bring good things and they give you a sense of higher purpose. grand trines also provide protection, because it's the idea that if you're experiencing good things in life, that you're probably getting the jealous glares and glances of other people who covet the good fortune that you are experiencing. So the grand trine will also protect you in this regard. So if Jupiter in Leo is all about good fortune coming to you through the belief that you have in yourself, then this grand trine protects the self that you are believing. Maybe earlier in your life you felt unrecognized or unappreciated. Maybe earlier in your life, like in childhood, you were raised in a household or a culture that didn't really appreciate who you were as an individual. And you might have felt in some way repressed or edited or overshadowed or maybe even ignored or perhaps thrown out of this household or culture or society. A lot of times when you have grand trine energy in your life, you experience protection in the area of life that grand trine rules over. And so, for instance, let's say you have a grand trine in Earth, which is the element of health and wealth. You might start out in your life experiencing bad health or bad wealth, and so that grand trine in Earth becomes a protective agent in your life, and it holds a space until you can grow into that energy of health and wealth. You basically become stronger or wealthier because that grand trine has provided a protection for you to nurture and to grow in. The same idea can hold true with fire, that you might have been edited or repressed or ignored or told not to be a certain sort of way, but that grand trine in fire gave you the confidence, gave you the knowledge, even though your circumstances were against it, and people were maybe even against you, you always had that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you led with that all the time or that you were defying people. You might have gone through a period of time where you were very conformist or your light, burned at a lower flame. But now that the grand trine is here, it's kind of like, I don't know, the Olympic torch having been passed from hand to hand to hand and finally lighting the torch that it needs to light to show the beginning of the Olympics. So that's kind of what's going on in your life, that you've arrived at a point or a place in your life where you feel like you are truly stepping into who you were always meant to be. And the grand trine in fire, which is augmented by Jupiter's translation of light, is something that's bringing this to being. It's making it materialize. There may be certain offers or opportunities that you've accepted. Maybe you've gotten to a certain place in your career or your calling in which now you're being recognized for who you are. You're being recognized for what it is that you do. And this is a wonderful thing. It's a big difference we make when we go from striving to arriving. Striving is carrying that Olympic torch and running towards, that destination, whereas arriving is being the person who comes and lights it and everyone says, huzzah, let's celebrate the Olympics. Okay. So arriving is a wonderful thing, but arriving also sort of requires a change of perspective, that suddenly, wow, okay, we've arrived and this is what's expected of us. And this is what we're all about. Okay, as a Sagittarius or Sagittarius rising, you tend to be more about the journey than the destination. And that's not just, a meme or a saying. You really enjoy getting lost in the journey and you could sort of care less about the destination. What this signals right now is that you've arrived at the destination and that you are now inhabiting a space. You are now inhabiting your life at full throttle, and this is a wonderful thing, and things will change in accordance to it. So what this is doing with this translation of light is that it is rekindling your faith in your higher purpose. A lot of times we can go in search of our higher purpose, and like I said, how the journey can be more important than the destination. Looking for that higher purpose is the way that we gain wisdom. It's the way that we accrue experience. It's the way that we celebrate or wonder at the world. And that a fear can be that now that we've found it, is that all there is to a higher purpose? That it might be sort of disappointing in a way, or it might be kind of like, okay, I found it and what next? So what happens here with the Jupiter's translation of light is that it rekindles your faith in your purpose. Now that you've gone from striving to arriving and you're here, there's a new requirement of your faith, which is to inhabit that purpose, to be that purpose that you have been seeking. And more than that, to be that role model for other people, to be the person that other people look up to. So this isn't going to be a period of Queen's wave to the crowd, that adores you. This is going to be more being a role model to other people, being the reason why people lift their gaze up to you. They lift your gaze up to you because you are being true to your talents. You are being true to your abilities. You are being true to your spirit, to your heart. You are being true to your individuality. And that by you being true to your individuality, by you being true to the good in you, they can see the good in themselves. So this is really an extraordinary experience, and it will change things for you, to be the person who is admired and respected. And when you step into that role as a result of this translation of light, which culminates on August 31st, I think you're going to find yourself amazingly comfortable with it, and I think you're going to find yourself welcoming this. You have always wanted to be an inspiration. And now that you are that font of inspiration for other people, this is going to give you a sense of yourself that's so much more than you ever imagined being. But also it's going to give you a selflessness that is more generous than you ever could have calculated. If you're born under Capricorn, or you have Capricorn rising, Jupiter's translation of light, which lasts from July 20th and 21st until August 31st, is going to be a little bit challenging for you. Now, not challenging in the square sense, like Jupiter in Leo has a very different idea of life than you do as a Capricorn. It's not challenging in that way. It's challenging because it's going to hit you at a very sensitive angle of your own solar horoscope. Right now, Jupiter in Leo is traveling through that part of your solar chart that deals with financial anxiety. It deals with a few other things, but here I really want to focus on financial anxiety. Now, one could say anyone born under Capricorn who has Capricorn rising is born into financial anxiety. It's something that you knew from when you were a toddler to where you are now in your life. Like, what's new about that? I mean, Capricorns or Capricorns have this definite sense that winter is coming. But what I mean by financial anxiety and the way that Jupiter in Leo is going to interact with that anxiety is that Jupiter in Leo is going to push you forward into taking more of a risk. It's going to push you forward into having more skin in the game. And the reason for this is because Jupiter in Leo believes that it's time for you to get over your financial anxiety. People born under Capricorn or Capricorn rising have a natural sense of scarcity in their lives. You're a winter sign. Indeed, your sign is the sign that rules over the winter solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere. So you're used to doing without. You're used to the path being rugged. You're used to icy slopes that you slip down. And you're used to gains and accomplishments that should have been within easy reach becoming much more difficult and becoming much more protracted. It takes you longer to reach your destination than it takes most other people. So this Jupiter in Leo is saying, have faith, okay? Have faith in money, okay? Now, does it mean have faith in money, like in currency or crypto coins or anything along those lines? No, it's have faith in your ability to make money, which actually is have faith in your own sense of prosperity. Now, when Jupiter is in the solar 8th house, this is more a psychological relationship to money than it is an actual relationship to money. And I really want to make that distinction here. Capricorns, like Taurus and Virgos, are earth signs. And so you guys can draft a financial plan and do your figures and figure out your profit gains or whatever in your sleep. That's not a big deal. But the psychology of money becomes more of a big deal when it triggers anxiety or when it triggers panic about scarcity. A lot of times people born under Capricorn and Capricorn rising cover up their fears. People born under Capricorn and Capricorn rising live with a lot of fear of scarcity, of doing without, but they cover that up actually by being bolder in the way that they are driven towards ambition and reaching the top. I mean, you are born under the mountain goat, which aims to reach the top of the mountain. But the anxiety about money can also become a way that you spook yourself into being prudent, that you spook yourself into making careful judgments and in plotting a way that you can understand the way forward. Capricorns or Capricorn risings are closet risk takers, but whenever you feel like you're on the verge of doing that, you can frighten yourself with old wives' tales of how people went bankrupt and went bust, and you'll go back to the old way or the proven way of doing things. With Jupiter in Leo, it's saying you have a talent, you have an ability that money will reward. That doesn't mean you have a talent and an ability at making money and that's all you're ever going to do in your life. What it says is whatever your talent, your acumen, your ability, your skill, it will be richly rewarded if you would let yourself live out of that place. Okay. Many times earth signs will take a job to pay the rent and they will forego what their talent or their original aspiration or ambition was. They'd rather have the security of finances than the realization of their own gifts. Jupiter in Leo means that fortune smiles on you being true to you, on you being true to your talents, your abilities, and your gifts. And what's being required of you is not like, I can do it, kind of bravado. What's being required of you is that you side with your talent. You side with your ability. You side with your gift. Maybe this is something that you're already doing in your life. Then Jupiter is asking you to put more energy into it. Maybe this is something that you always wanted to do in your life, but always found a reason to get out of it. Jupiter is saying it's time to take that more seriously. It's more than time to take it more seriously. It's time to act on it and then activate it. Or maybe you're being asked to take a big financial risk. Jupiter and Leo saying, take it, for God's sake, already go. It will make you happier. Put it all on that one number. Put it all on that one bet. It will work out. And the reason it will work out is because of the translation of light, that the Jupiter in Leo is forming a trine to Neptune in Aries, that it, yes, will be opposed to the Pluto in Aquarius in that part of your chart that deals with finances, hence the chill that's going down your spine right now. But it will also sextile Uranus and Gemini, which forms a trine to that Pluto in Aquarius. Long story short, or rather the point that I want to make, is your prosperity lies in your advancement. It lies in you building on what you have. It lies on you being true to your talents and your gifts. It lies in you backing the things that you really want to do in your life rather than the things that you have to do. And what you're going to find, even if this results in you changing a career, is that you've developed all the abilities over time of scrutinizing finances, of making business plans, that you can apply that to pottery classes if you want, or basket weaving, and you could probably turn into a major enterprise. In other words, whatever you love, maybe it's poetry, you can turn that into something that's profitable. It's not going to make you tons of money, but it's profitable in that it gives you a sense of realization and recognition. And who knows, maybe you would make a lot of money at poetry. I mean, this is the time to find out. So the thing is, fortune favors the brave. And what Jupiter and Leo is asking you to do is have the bravery of the things that give you pleasure. Have the bravery of the pursuits that you feel challenge you in a stimulating way, or are creative, or really allow you to exercise your talents and abilities. Follow that course. Show the bravery that fortune favors. Do this, and not only will you exceed your own expectations, but you will benefit and feel fulfilled by them. If you're born under Aquarius, or you have Aquarius rising, the first thing you're going to feel during Jupiter's translation of light is that Jupiter-Pluto opposition. And the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, which is going right across the horizon of your chart, is going to make you say, well, I am not like them. Now, why are you saying, well, I am not like them, like that? Well, the reason you're saying that is because Jupiter is in the zodiac sign of Leo. And Leo forms an opposition to Pluto, which is in your own sign of Aquarius. And so everything that you cannot stand about people being egotistical or full of themselves or saying, do you know who I am? Or just being these overblown peacocks parading around, everything that you cannot stand about those people is being mirrored back to you. In other words, you're surrounded by very big personalities right now, by very dramatic personalities right now, by very strong and strong-willed personalities right now. And what they're all saying to you is, you're one of us. You're just like we are. And you are recoiling at the thought of that. You are not, I am not some pompous peacock. I'm not some overblown ego. No, I am not like you. Stop saying that. I will never be like you. I'm an Aquarian. I have principles. I have standards. I work for the good of the collective. I do not work for the good of myself. And what Jupiter and Leo is here to tell you is it's about time that you start working for the good of yourself. Now, this is going to be a big thinking cap change that you're going to be making, okay? Going from the we way of approaching life to the me way of approaching life. You're an air sign. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. So you think in terms of the word we, W-E, doing things as part of a group, as part of a partnership, part of a relationship, part of a team. You didn't win, we all won. Now, when you have Jupiter in Leo, forming an opposition to Pluto in your sign, it takes the W and we and it turns it upside down to an M, and you get me, and the wonders of me. And there's a lot to celebrate about the fire signs, because fire signs celebrate me. They celebrate individuality. No element places a higher value on being your own person, on being an individual, on being the best that you could possibly be than a fire sign does. And the reason they place that value on it is twofold. The first is fire signs make a difference. They make a difference in other people's lives, and they make a difference in the world. And the second purpose being fulfilled by that is, if you didn't have individuality, if you didn't have uniqueness, then we would all be cookie cutter cutouts of the same personality, of the same identity. So fire signs celebrate that they are different, that there are no two people like themselves. And this is something that you could definitely benefit from right now, once you get over your natural revulsion and recoiling from that idea. In order for you to go the next step in your career, your life, service to community, in the things that you do for other people, you need to show the strength of your personality. You can no longer do things as part of a group or a collective. It's great, and it served a purpose for a period of time, but what's missing is you. What's missing is your taste, your point of view, your temperament, your way of seeing things. You need to stop talking as the collective we, or even putting things in terms of someone else, and you need to start claiming who you are, because you're the person who made the difference. You're the person who made something that everyone said couldn't happen. You're the person who delivered, and you're the person who's probably moving into a leadership position. Again, another thing that Aquarians are very good at and very uncomfortable with. A lot of times we talk about Aquarius as the rebel, the person who overthrows people in power, people in leadership. But if you look at, for instance, the history of presidents in the United States, a lot of them have been born under the zodiac sign of Aquarius, okay? And what it is that they take the idea of those democratic principles and they lead with that idea. Now, there might be certain downsides or costs that were paid or something along those lines, but nevertheless, you need a strong person who's also becomes the mouthpiece for the collective or the mouthpiece of the society. And that's essentially what's going on with you in your life right now. But with Jupiter being opposite you, there's a sort of, you don't like what you see in the mirror. You know, for you to become a person in charge or a leader, then that means you're going to become one of them, you know, overinflated egos and people and bossing people around and domineering others in conversation and things like that. No, you don't have to become that at all. You can be who you've always been, but we need more of you. Okay, we need more of a personal investment. We need more of an understanding of your thinking. We need more, God forbid, a revelation of your feelings. Okay, the Jupiter in Leo is saying, have faith in your own individuality. Okay, and if you don't feel ready to take on your own individuality, if you don't feel ready to be the ego center of your own life, then because of its opposition, you will be surrounded by people who have no problem doing that, because the reason that they're in your life is to stimulate you in that regard. They're there to get you to step into a more ego-centered life, to step into a more self-centered life. And I'm not saying ego-centered or self-centered in a sort of, you know, it's all about me way. I'm saying it more like being the sun that the planets orbit, you know, being the center of this solar system, taking up that mantle of leadership that you have to give. You know, you have so much to give, so much more to give, but maybe with less sacrifice of yourself. Maybe with more like, okay, I worked X amount of hours today and I stop at this time. And you really do stop at the time. You don't keep going. You know, that you get more of a personal life instead of it just being about other people. That's why you need a more ego-centered life. That's why you need a more self-centered life. That's what the Jupiter in Leo is there to do. You know, it torments you because it's like, ugh, everything you've always sworn you would never be, but in a delightful way. It's saying, listen, you know, a little ego never hurt anyone. Aquarius, or someone with Aquarius rising, you know, like saying me and my and mine isn't going to like destroy you. In effect, what it's going to do is give you more of a sense of maybe what your priorities are and what your boundaries are, or maybe it just gives you more of a personal life or a private life rather, you know. So let the radiance of that Jupiter in Leo work its magic through its translation of light, and you will gradually see that you can become a leader or a strong person without becoming, you know, a pumped up peacock, you know, and that people would celebrate it, that people would see someone who really makes a difference and sets an example. And I think if you can get your mind around that and how that's going to benefit you and fulfill you, I think that you're going to enjoy Jupiter's translation of light as the dawning of a new and glorious day. If you're born under Pisces, or you have Pisces rising, Jupiter's translation of light is going to be a wonderful experience for you. A wonderful experience in the end, but perhaps a bit befuddling at first. Or another way of saying it is, it's complicated. Now, why is it complicated? Well, first of all, Jupiter's translation of light should be lovely. You are a child of Jupiter. Jupiter is your traditional ruling planet. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune and higher purpose, and as a Pisces, you have experienced the ups and downs of good fortune and higher purpose according to what zodiac sign Jupiter happens to be traveling through. And no matter the disappointments or the difficulties you faced, you've always believed in your heart of hearts that there's a moral to the lesson. There's a reason why you're going through this, and it's to deepen you as a person and make you a more profound and feeling soul. And all of these things are absolutely true. But Jupiter, traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo, makes an odd angle to you in your own solar horoscope. Jupiter here is less about the regality of Jupiter. It's less about its nobility. It's less about those noblesse oblige tendencies. And it's more of a humble Jupiter. It's more of a Jupiter that takes pride and has faith in the work that it does. Nowadays, you may not feel much pride or faith in the work that you do. In fact, you may be feeling that it's a bit tedious or redundant or even repetitive. That maybe you've gone as far as you can go in your particular vocation or your path, and that people rely on you and they appreciate and recognize you. But you yourself may feel a bit restless. You yourself may feel a bit at odds. And some of that is coming from Uranus traveling through the base of your own solar horoscope. Uranus, when it's traveling through your IC, that's basically abbreviation for Imum Coeli, which is Latin for bottom of the sky. Uranus is an uprooting type of energy. It makes you feel restless. It makes you feel like you don't want to be where you are. And so your natural inclination is to pull stakes and leave, to go on to something else, to go on to something different that might be more fulfilling or enlightening. But what happens with Jupiter being in a particular part of your solar chart, which we call the sixth house, which is the house of work and service, Jupiter is asking you to stay put, to stick with what it is that you're doing. And this might run contrary to what you're feeling right now. You might be feeling like you've done everything that there is for you to do, or you might feel like you're stuck in a rut, or that maybe even life is passing you by. But Jupiter in Leo in your solar sixth house is asking you to stay put, to not leave what it is that you're doing. And so your natural question would be like, why? And the answer is because you're making an enormous difference in the lives of those people you serve. Okay? You are making an important difference in the people who are finding reliability from you, support from you, wise counsel from you, guidance from you. These people have a tremendous amount of faith and appreciation, respect and regard for you. And what can happen during this kind of translation of light is that the light really is more about effusing or illuminating a room as it is a light that's guiding you. In other words, you may not realize what an important difference you make for people. I don't know if you're familiar with that film, It's a Wonderful Life. It's one of my favorite films ever, okay? It's an amazing film, an amazing script, and an amazing performance by the cast. And it's basically the story of this guy who, has lived in this town all of his life, and he's done all the right things. And he's always wanted to get out and see the world, but whenever it comes to him getting out and seeing the world, he's thwarted in some way. He's always led back to his job with a savings and loan, which is a family-owned savings and loan, which doesn't always do so well, but yet the people of this town rely on him to make the loans, to keep their money, and he's the person who sort of helps make things happen, especially since he's countered by another person in the town who's very greedy and buying up land and lots and wants to turn the town into Pottersville, and so Jimmy Stewart, who I think he plays George Bailey is his name, stands up for, people having the money and the means to make something of themselves in their own town and to pursue and experience their own happiness. And there comes a time in which he has sacrificed so much of himself. And whenever he's like about to go on a trip or leave or whatever, he's thwarted and he's so frustrated. And a beloved uncle of his loses the money for the savings deposit that day. And actually Potter, goes and sort of steals it, actually. He loses the money. And so George is facing bankruptcy on Christmas Eve. And this is going to be the end of his life. And so he goes out, his family's celebrating Christmas, and they're all disappointed, but they'll get together. They're feeling still like, we're a loving family. We'll get through whatever the hard times are. And he goes out to a bridge in the middle of a snowstorm, and he's going to throw himself off the bridge. He's going to commit suicide. He's just been so disappointed, so thwarted, so despondent. And instead, another person hurls himself off the bridge and into the ocean, or into the river, rather. And George is like, oh my God, and he dives in and he rescues this person. And the person he rescues is his guardian angel. And they have this conversation where George is nothing but darkness and bitterness. I mean, you've really seen the spirit stamped out of him. And the guardian angel, isn't trying to give a pep talk, but he's countering George's assumptions. He's making George think and question the assumptions and conclusions that he's arrived at. And ultimately, George says, I wish that I had never been born. I'm just so despondent. I wish that I had never been born, which is the same wish that Job makes in the book of Job. And so there's a wind that blows through this cabin. It's like a little cabin next to the bridge that George was going to throw himself off. A wind blows through, and the world is now different. And Clarence, who is his guardian angel, takes him on this journey through the town, the way the town would have been had George not ever been born. And it is a nightmare. It's awful. The people's spirits are all squashed. He wasn't there to save his brother from a skating accident, and so his brother dies, and his family is mournful and despondent, and the woman that he loves never marries and finds the love of her life, and Potter becomes hugely rich off the backs of this destroyed town, and it's an absolute nightmare. And George begs Clarence to take him back. It's like, please take me back, I want to live. And of course Clarence does. And the movie ends with people finding out about bankruptcy and coming up with the money and giving it to him, and they're paying back, they're giving back to George what George had given to them for all these years. And it ends really beautifully and very happy. It's really, honestly, one of my favorite holiday films. So what I want to share with you about this story that I just told is that we can feel like a cog in the wheel. We could feel like we don't make much of a difference. We can feel like our life is somewhere else, and we need to go and find that. And if we could only find that, we would be happy. And that in some ways we're thwarted. We're always led back to the job we're trying to leave, or we're led back to the responsibilities that we're forced to take on again. And Jupiter in Leo is saying, take these responsibilities on again. Be led back to this place again. And we may feel, or you may feel, if you're born under Pisces or Pisces rising, what could be the point of this? What could be the purpose of this? This is everything that I've wanted to leave. And Jupiter in Leo is here to say to you, have faith in this. Not forever, but for now. Have faith in this. Have faith in the fact that you make a difference. And this is the way that you make a difference. And ultimately, you may decide to move on to something else when Jupiter leaves Leo. But right now, during the year that it's here in its translation of light, it's showing you how much of a difference you make in other people's lives and what good you bring. And it may be something that you completely see as a rut or doing no good at all, or not even a big deal. And Jupiter, by its translation of light, is here to show you it is a big deal. It means a lot to the people in the lives around you. And maybe if you can't generate the faith in yourself right now, you can let these people's faith in you generate the faith in yourself right now. And that by staying here for at least a year, that's all you have to be here for. You can go on if you want to next July. But by staying here for at least a year, you're going to recognize something about you that's very precious, that's very valuable, and that you make a profound difference in other people's lives, and that the world would be a sorrier place if you were not here right now.